Good afternoon. I hope you are all excited to be here today. It is a beautiful day outside. I've been outside all day and it's nice to kind of come in and cool off, and then we're going to heat up the kitchen again. So it's good to be here. We're doing chicken gumbo today. Really cool style of dish coming out of Louisiana. Lots and lots of history behind this kind of cuisine, and especially gumbo itself. It's just something that I've loved to make for years, and this recipe that I've kind of designed over the years has been one of my favorites to share with my family and to have for myself, and it's a fairly economical dish, so it's nice to be able to use lots of fresh veggies and get lots and lots of flavor out of them. So I'm really excited to share it with you today, as I usually am. So to get us started, we will get a look at our equipment, some bowls for our mise en place. I'm assuming everybody roasted their chicken today. I had put a note on the page yesterday saying that we should roast a chicken beforehand. Just because gumbo takes a bit of time, I roasted this beautiful bird this morning so it is nice and cool, and I can add it to my soup as I go. Soup or a stew, I'm going to let you guys decide. Some people would call this a stew, some people would call it a soup. Depends on how thick I make it, but I'd probably call it a stew, closer to than a soup. Anyway, we need our bowls for mise en place, our cutting board, our knives, and then a nice big pot that we're going to use to cook the soup. And you don't need a pot this big, this is just the one that I like to use. And then a little pot because we're going to cook the rice separately today. So traditionally, a gumbo takes anywhere from 2.5 to 4 or 5 hours to get the flavors. But today we're going to cook it in an hour and a half. That's part of the reason that we were going to roast the chicken ahead of time. If you didn't get to roasting a chicken and you want to make a vegetarian version of this dish, absolutely you can. You can just follow with the vegetables and everything else, and then just skip adding the chicken. You could also add andouille sausage. You could do any kind of shellfish, or a combination of those things. Very traditional to see any of those things, or all of those things in the gumbo. Today we're going to do chicken, and that's just because that's the way my family likes it, and it's not as easy to get shellfish around here, at least not cheaply, so I like to stick with the chicken variety. But yeah, any kind of version, alternative way of doing this kind of a soup, you could definitely work with the same profile and switch up the meat. So we will get started with our mise en place. So I'm assuming you guys have some stock and your rice. We have carrots, celery, onion for our mirepoix. So one of the things with our mirepoix today is when you're making a gumbo or a jambalaya or really any kind of Creole style cooking, there's a thing called the Holy Trinity. So if you saw on the ingredient list, we actually had bell peppers or carrots. So my family does not like bell peppers. I love bell peppers. My husband really doesn't like them. So I sub mine for a true French mirepoix with carrots. So either way, or you can add both if you like. Totally up to you guys, but we're going to cut all of our mirepoix or our Holy Trinity. So Holy Trinity would be peppers instead of carrots, but celery and onions, same amounts as the carrots in a traditional mirepoix. We're going to cut them all into a small dice, perfect for soup. So cutting off the ends of our onions, saving all that beautiful stuff for our next round of veggie stock. Now you're also adjusted to making your own veggie stock, and you can see how I use my own veggie stock in almost every meal that I prep at home. It's just something that I always have on hand. This is the stuff I made yesterday, and it is a little bit darker. I used a lot of broccoli ends, I think, in this one, and carrot ends. So I made the stock a little darker. A good, solid, strong stock is very important, vital to this dish. As with most Creole cooking, you're looking at lots of strong, willed flavors. So the other thing that we're going to talk a lot about today is this beautiful little vegetable that I ordered in here in Esterhazy at the Family Foods. We got some okra. Okra is an incredible little vegetable. Works as a thickener in soups and stews. Very traditional West African ingredient. So, like I was saying, this dish is really awesome to make. And one of the reasons I really like it is that there's so much that you can learn about history when you're learning about things like gumbo and Creole cooking. Really, truly, this dish personifies the word Creole. Like its human counterparts, gumbo was born in the New World and took cues from the old, but adopted them and adapted them to be new. So it's really cool because there's so much pieces of history that are not, something we really love to look at. The reason that we have Creole-style dish is when slaves were being brought over from Africa in the 18th century over to the southern states. They brought a lot of ingredients with them, and they cooked very similar dishes to a jambalaya and what we call a gumbo now, based on the combination of French-style cookery and cuisine, Spanish influence, some just lost my train of thought. Some influence from the French, some influence from West Africa, especially in terms of flavors and the spice, but also from Native Americans. The style really came across when during colonialism in the 1800s, late 1700s, turn of the 18th century. So this is a very old dish, but has come a lot of different ways and shapes and forms along the years. But it is heavily influenced by West African flavor. So it's really cool to see how food plays into history. And so much of what we do, it is something that is shared and is something that transcends, ethnic barriers and transcends so many different political things happening in our world. Food is one of those things that we can share despite where we come from, despite our differences, has always made its way to stay with people around their tables, and it's something that can be shared and had together. And I just think that that's so incredible to be able to be part of something that nourishes us in a physical sense, but very much in a social sense. It is part of our culture and part of how we share in each other's cultures. So Creole cooking really is really defined by just that. It's actually really cool when you start reading about the history of gumbo, just how many different things come into play. Like when okra came over, okra is actually literally defined as gumbo. The word gumbo is the North African word for okra. So if you look on the package when you buy it at the store, you'll see it says gumbo, G-O-M-B-U. I think that's very, very cool. So this recipe I actually started making when I worked at the restaurant I worked at in Fort McMurray for over 5 years, and I had a young fellow who grew up in New Orleans who worked for us for a couple different summers, and he used to always say that my gumbo reminded him of being home. That it was the closest thing he's ever had to authentic gumbo out of Louisiana. So I always thought that was a pretty awesome compliment to get from someone who actually grew up there, because it is actually defined as Louisiana state food. They even have like a gumbo festival in a town in Louisiana, which I just think that is so cool. So much a part of their culture and so much a part of their identity too. I think that's amazing when dishes can kind of transcend time and be a part of framing an entire culture. That's just so cool. All right, so if you're with me, we are working on our mirepoix. So I have my celery, carrots, and onions all cut up there, nice small dice, and then we're going to cut these okra. So I cut the little ends right off. Try to cut it as close as you can, but you want to make sure that what you see inside is you see the little holes. So these are going to thicken up our stew today. So we talk to some people and they would definitely say that you need a roux for a gumbo. I've never used a roux for a gumbo. I like to keep the flour out of it. I don't think it's really necessary, but some true to authenticity folks will say that yes, absolutely you need a roux. We're not going to use a roux today. We're just going to use the okra, and we're actually going to serve the gumbo over the rice. So we're going to cook the rice separately. But if you have your okra, you cut the ends off, and then we're just going to slice them just in little slices, just right across like that, little kind of circly looking bad boys. And so I really like okra. I like the flavor. One of the things that I do with okra when I'm not using it in a gumbo or Creole cooking is I like to slice it right down the middle in half and roast it with a little bit of oil and salt and pepper. It is so good on pizzas, delicious, in so many different types of soup, and it's so, so good for you. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's even said that the seeds are used for treating headaches and arthritis. They say that you can break it down into like a juice, and you can use it as a cough suppressant. Really, really cool little vegetable, and you don't see it out here too often. But if you ever get a chance to get your hands on some nice stuff, and the stuff they ordered in here for me today is especially nice. It's a fun vegetable to try in different stuff because it has a really different flavor. I don't know if I could really compare it to anything else that I'm really familiar with. It has like a big pepperiness to it. It almost has the flavor of a pepper, like a bell pepper or a poblano pepper. It's pretty light, and it's got a lot of fiber to it, so it's got a really nice crunch. And you can eat it with lots of different stuff. I've even had it I've made it into with salads and just lots of soups and stews. I see it in a lot, but a really, really awesome little vegetable. So, fun stuff. We get to work with that today. We're going to slice all those okra up, get it all ready to go here. And then we're going to move on to our garlic. And so I have jalapenos and lime here. You don't really need either. If you really don't want a super spicy soup, you could totally negate the jalapenos altogether. I like it spicy, and I like the taste of jalapenos, so I am going to add jalapenos. I also have a couple limes here. You could use lime, a little bit of lemon juice, but you might not need to. It depends on the acidity of the tomatoes and kind of how things shape up. I kind of wait till the end to add, close to the end to add the limes if I think that it needs a little bit more of a citrusy note, but you could use just a little bit of lemon juice if you like, or nothing at all if you think that the finish is nice and well-rounded. Especially if you're not using jalapenos, you might not feel the need for the lime juice, but totally up to you. I like to have options. All right, we're also gonna mince up some garlic here, and as you can tell when you're cutting up the okra, your knife is gonna get really sticky. It has this stringy, juicy component to it, and that's the part that actually thickens the soup. But it is kind of a little slimy feeling. I don't think there's a better word to describe that, but yeah, it's got a weird texture. So anyway, you might need to wash your knife off. Alrighty, so we got some garlic. I'm just gonna go do like 2 full cloves, I think, today. I wouldn't go too much more than that because you don't want the garlic to overpower the other flavors in this dish. There's a lot of flavors going on, and we really want to have them kind of work together here so that we don't have too much of any one flavor, and garlic tends to kind of overkill some of the other flavors. But it's up to you. If you'd like to add a little bit more garlic, you like things garlicky, then by all means. I'd say 2 medium-sized cloves is probably more than enough for our purposes today, but if you like it a little bit more garlicky, go for it. So yes, this is a community dish. The idea was that, you know, back in the day, people would trade certain ingredients that they had or that they grew or that they were more familiar with for other people's different ingredients, different herbs and different vegetables and stuff. And then you'd make this big, big pot of gumbo and you'd share it with everybody. And it was one of those dishes that has transcended the urban nature of it. It started out as kind of more of a poor man's dish because it's economical and you can make a lot of it with your ingredients. But then it became well adopted into a more like rural setting as well. And now it is something that is shared by all kinds of people in all kinds of ways. And you know, some of the most famous dishes that we have, you know, even ratatouille started out as very much a peasant dish. And so it's interesting to know now that you can go to a really nice restaurant and order a beautiful plate of ratatouille and it will not be cheap. But the ingredients, dependent on their availability, would be fresh in the late summer and therefore an easy dish to make that isn't very expensive, and you could get the ingredients for it anytime if you want it. So I think it's cool that we get to all share in something that, dependent on our status years ago, we might not have necessarily enjoyed in the same way. But over time, food gets shared and people talk about what they eat, and then all of a sudden everybody's eating it. And I think everybody in their own right has had gumbo or a jambalaya of some sort. People often ask me what the difference is between a gumbo and a jambalaya. To be quite honest, there's not a lot. I would say when I prepare gumbo, I prepare it more like I prepare a soup, and jambalaya, I prepare more like a stew. That being said, my husband loves jambalaya, and so I always make it with pasta because that's how he likes it. Traditionally, you would not see it with pasta like that, but he likes it that way. And I make it with chicken, like a spicy and gooey sausage, and then I also have prawns or crawfish or something, shellfish like in there as well. Whereas when I do a gumbo, I typically only pick one. So if I'm doing a gumbo, I would usually just use chicken, or I might just use shellfish, or I might just use sausage. I wouldn't use all three. So that's kind of how I define the difference. Honestly, some people say that a jambalaya is cooked with rice and a gumbo is served on the side. I think it's up to your own definition. I like jambalaya as much as I like gumbo, so I wouldn't complain if you served me either one. But yeah, this is going to be a really nice dish. I'm using 2 jalapenos here because like I said, I like it spicy. I also keep the seeds in it. I like the texture, and that's what gives it the real heat. So I don't think there's a real need to get rid of the seeds, but some people would tell you that you have to seed a jalapeno. The seeds might get a little bit bitter, but I don't find that it's ever been an issue for me in this style of a soup because we're going to break those flavors down and work them together to create an all new flavor profile, which is like my favorite thing to do, is build flavor. And so that's why we start with a nice, really gently seasoned chicken and a really nice, powerful, strong stock to bring all these flavors together as we cook them. And having that done ahead of time really saves us some effort here. We don't have to cook the jambalaya as long because the chicken has already been cooked, and we already have our stock made, and everything is just going to work out really nicely. I know you guys trust me. I don't have anybody commenting this afternoon. Is everybody there? Is everyone alive? You all with me? I'm going to assume that's a yes. All right. So for some of our spices today, we're going to work with a little bit of cumin. I like to add a little bit of spicy red peppers, some paprika, some chili powder, and I'm going to use a combination of dry oregano, and I have some fresh oregano that I grow here. It's called a golden oregano, and it is a little bit milder, so I'm going to use some of the dried oregano as well. All right, so it looks like I basically have everything set up here. My mirepoix is cut, my okra is ready, my garlic, jalapenos, and my tomatoes are ready to go. We're going to get started getting the base of the soup ready, and then we're going to cut into this beautiful chicken. We're going to carve some pieces off of that. The reason we roasted a full chicken is because I really think that it makes a big difference in the taste of the flavor of the soup to have some dark meat and some light meat. If you had chicken legs and chicken breasts, you could have done that as well. It's just very economical and easy to cook. To roast whole chicken, I'm probably not going to use this entire chicken for my gumbo tonight. I'm going to save a little bit because I like a little bit of breast meat to have on a sandwich the next day. So I seasoned it just with salt and pepper and butter, and then that way it easily translates into another dish if we don't use it all up tonight. So we're gonna get our pot ready to go. So we're gonna put it on high heat because we're gonna want to saute the veggies first. So get it nice and hot, and we're going to use butter. I like to use butter. If you would prefer to use a little bit of veggie oil or canola oil, you can do that as well. I like to use butter because butter is better than everything else, and it has the most flavor. And because I also use the butter to season my chicken, it only makes sense for me to use it in the soup. I always add a little touch of oil just to make sure my butter doesn't burn in the pan. Just a touch of oil, maybe 2 tablespoons or so of butter. So once that gets nice and hot, we're going to put the mirepoix in first, and we're going to make sure that it cooks out really nice. So we want those veggies to be almost translucent before we add the next stuff, because we're looking to get as much flavor from the mirepoix first into our soup, and then allow that to kind of cook out. If we cook it for too long and it browns, then they'll be overcooked. We still want to have those little textures of all of the mirepoix when we have our final product and we're eating. So we're going to put that in a nice hot pot. Beautiful, beautiful. Give that a good stir. And we're going to add our salt and pepper. Always season at the beginning, especially with soups where we're building lots of flavor from lots of different types of ingredients. You know, it's not just like a carrot soup or a tomato soup where you're getting the flavor from one vegetable primarily. These types of dishes really are about the marriage and the right proportions of the right flavors. So one thing that I think makes a really big difference is kind of toasting some of your spices. So while we're sauteing our mirepoix, I actually like to add a little bit of my chili. So I might add a little bit more later, but once you bring it onto the heat, the spices will bring out some of the flavor from the spices a little bit differently than if you add it to the water and just let it cook out. You're trying to toast the spice and get those aromatic aromas out and open and ready to go. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding my jalapenos, because I want that to really work into the flavor as well. So we're going to add a little bit of chili. I added about, I'd say about a tablespoon of chili. I like to start with a good amount of chili. And we're going to add a little bit of crushed red pepper if you like. Again, if you don't like it too spicy, you might want to hold off on the crushed red pepper. But you definitely should have a little bit of oregano and a little bit of cumin. So I like to add about equal parts cumin to oregano. I am going to add some fresh oregano a little bit later, so I'm not going to add too much dried here. But probably about a teaspoon of cumin and a teaspoon of oregano. I would say somewhere along those lines. All right, so we got all those herbs in there. Oh, it's already just starting to come out, and my onions are cooking very nicely. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit so I don't overcook the onions. And I'm going to add the jalapenos. And I'm going to add the garlic as well. So we minced up that garlic. Super, super nice. We're going to add that in there as well. I like to add the garlic a little bit later so we don't burn it. You really want it to work in with the other flavors of the dish, and you don't want it to be too toasty. So we're just going to give those a stir and let the peppers cook down just a little bit. And then we're going to add a little touch of paprika here. Now I wouldn't go too heavy on the paprika, maybe a half teaspoon. Again, paprika is another really strong flavor, and we don't want it to be the only spice that we're tasting. We really want to get a sense of all of those spices working together. So we got that going there, and we're going to add our tomatoes. So I cut up small dice, 2 small tomatoes. I didn't seed them or peel them or anything. I like the texture of all of the skin from the tomato in my soup. And also we're going to be cooking this for a good hour, so we want it to, we'll have time to break it down a little bit more. So I like to keep the skins on. There's lots of vitamins in the skin. No real need to skin those tomatoes. So I like to keep as much on as I can to get all that nice, tasty fiber. It's good for you. Alright. So we added all of our spices. We've got jalapenos in there, possibly. We've got our tomatoes in there. Our mirepoix is nice and cooking. And we're down to about a medium-high heat. Beautiful. So now I can see these are all nicely covered in spice. I'm going to turn that right down to low. And we're going to add some veggie stock. So I'm going to just start with a little bit of veggie stock, just to coat the bottom of the pan and keep the vegetables moist. So maybe just a half a cup in there, just to keep it moist for now. And we're going to open up this can of crushed tomatoes. So you could use tomato paste. You could use extra diced tomatoes if you like it a little chunkier. I find that the crushed tomatoes give it enough of the tomato flavor and enough of that color that you don't really need to add a whole bunch of other tomato stuff. Again, the flavors really need to work together here to really get that good marriage, creole of the gumbo, right? That harmony of flavors. It really is. They're functioning together, they're not functioning on their own. And tomato can be one of those things that really becomes, you know, one of the only flavors you're tasting in the dish. I've definitely had gumbos that were too tomatoey, and I didn't like it because it took away from all of the other wonderful natural flavors of all of the other ingredients. So I'm going to add this whole nice big 20-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. And I'm going to rinse out and get some extra water in there, just to make sure we get all that flavor from the can. We're not leaving any bits behind. And we're going to give that a stir. Beautiful. Oh, already just the colors, the smells. Oh, once this all comes together, in that harmony, the symphony of flavors, I say. All right, we got this guy going. You know, we might actually be done a little bit early today, so we might be eating a little bit before 6. Which is a-okay by me. I definitely did not overeat today so that I could really, really enjoy this. So I'm hungry, so we might be eating early. All right, we're gonna cook the rice. We're gonna cook it ahead of time and let it cool and set it on the side of the oven. Just because we're gonna pour the hot gumbo kind of in and around. We're gonna plate it with the rice in the middle actually, and it looks really cool, plated all around. And so we're gonna add the rice. It can be cooled down. So we're going to cook it now. So for my family, I need about a cup of rice. A cup of rice is enough portions for all of us tonight and for all of us to have lunch tomorrow. And I don't know if my dad is watching right now, but he said he might be. But I don't think my mom was around to cook him gumbo tonight because I think she's golfing. So I'm going to make a little extra today and bring it to my dad. In case he didn't get a chance to try it, because I know he really likes jambalaya and gumbo and that kind of flavor profile, so I'm going to make a little extra. But about a cup is more than enough for 3 people. So a cup of rice, I'm using actually a converted rice, but you could use jasmine. Converted rice holds up really well. Actually, I'm not using a converted rice. I'm using a Thai rice today, and that's just because that's what I had. Usually I would use converted rice because it holds up really well. It doesn't get, it's hard to overcook it. So it stays really nice. But you can really use any kind of rice that you'd like. You can use a brown rice or whatever. I've even seen it served with grits when I was in the States. So it really just depends what you like, but I definitely think that the more traditional style of gumbo is served with a nice hearty white rice. And white rice was actually grown in Louisiana in the beginning of the 18th century because it was brought over from Africa as well. Something that wasn't typically grown or seen being grown in the southern states at that time. And then they started planting rice there, and it became such a staple in a lot of their cooking and just Creole cooking in general. You see a lot of dishes accompanied with rice. Again, really economical, really easy, stores for a long time. Really, really great. So depending on the kind of rice, you're going to need a different type of cooking method. For this type of rice, I use 1 cup of rice do 1.5 cups of vegetable stock or water. I'm gonna use water today because I want my rice to be really nice and white, just because I think it looks really cool in the bowl at the end. But for flavor-wise, I almost always use straight stock, chicken stock or veggie stock when I'm cooking my rice. Today, I'm just gonna use water because I want to keep that nice white color. So I need 1.5 cups or 1.5 cups of water to a cup of rice, about a teaspoon of butter right in the pan, and about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Don't forget the salt. It's always weird when your rice doesn't have enough seasoning. All right, so we're going to bring that to a boil and then cover it up and cook it for not too long, maybe 12 minutes. Thai rice doesn't take too long. All right, while that's going, the only things we should have left are limes, if we want to use limes. I have a little bit of fresh oregano that I'm going to put in a little bit later. And then we have our okra and our chicken. So our okra and our chicken are last. And the reason we don't add the okra yet is because the okra will thicken as it's cooking. So we don't want it to thicken yet because I really want to be able to gauge how much I need. And the okra doesn't take very long to cook. So it actually goes in closer to the end of cooking, and you're going to see how it thickens up. And so all of that juicy, kind of slimy, stringy stuff on the inside of the okra is going to help bring it all together. It's really, really cool to see. And typically I would actually cook the rice in the gumbo, just like we did with our Thai soup when we did our soup tutorial last week. Sorry, week before last week. We took a break last week. And you could do it either way, honestly. So again, there's that whole issue for some folks of whether or not this is a soup or a stew. Part of that is that typically you would see in a stew the rice being cooked into the dish, kind of like a jambalaya. Whereas with a gumbo, you typically see it on the outside, more like a soup. But I don't know if I would say that is a total definition. But either way, today we're going to cook it on the outside. So we have this beautiful chicken. I want a nice amount of dark meat, so I'm going to take my thigh and this whole leg here and get that little oyster, that beautiful little piece right in the hip, right above the hip, this piece here. That's like the most flavorful part of the chicken. Comes out as a little oyster. Gotta add that. All right, and then I'm going to carve my chicken breast. And I think I'm going to take all of the white meat, and you know what? I'm going to take both legs, and I'm going to leave a little bit of that white meat left over for me for later. So with the full chicken, it's just nice to be able to get that different flavors from a couple different places on the chicken. If you're just using thighs, of course, I always love using chicken thighs as much as possible because they have so much tasty dark meat flavor. But with a gumbo, I really want to use some white meat and some dark meat. And it's just easy to cook one big chicken, and then you have bones after for your vegetable stock, which is just my favorite to make chicken and vegetable stock from my scraps. So it's always nice when I have a full chicken because then I get to roast the bones and make a nice chicken stock. So I like to keep the skin on. Some people would take it off, but I think it's just lovely and it's just going to add more flavor to the soup. So again, up to you. If you want to make it a little lighter for yourself, you absolutely can cut the skins off if you like. Okay, so I got probably a good 1.5 pounds of meat here. That's going to be plenty for me today. So I'm just going to take all that meat, take a look here at where my bones are, pop out that joint from the thigh there into the hip bone, separate that out. And it's nice once you have it cooked ahead of time and cooled because you can go in with your hands and simply pull the meat right off, which just makes your life a little bit easier. When I used to make it at the restaurant, I made such a big pot of gumbo, I had to cook 10 little chickens, and I used most of that meat for the gumbo. That's how much gumbo I was making, and I always cooked my chickens the day before so that I could strip the chickens down with my hands, and it was a little bit easier to get more of the meat off. I'm not working with a hot piece of chicken. Just easier. It's just easier. Just prep it ahead. It's easier. And it saves me cooking time when I'm actually making the soup. I'm not waiting on chicken and stuff, but you absolutely could. If you were doing this with shellfish, you wouldn't add the shellfish until closer to the end, in my opinion. But you would want to make a fish or stock from shellfish to add to kind of well round out that flavor. For a chicken one, you would want to use chicken stock or veggie stock. Honestly, I find that you can get just as much flavor from a really good quality veggie stock. So I just like to use veggie stock, but I always have it on hand. But either way, all right, so we separated those bones, taking a look here. That's looking really nice. And then we're just going to cut that chicken into little bite-sized pieces. Some of it's going to break down, especially if you have a nice, nicely roasted chicken. It's going to break down really easily. And I like to just cut through those skins and add them right to the soup. Beautiful, beautiful. So next week, I think might be one of my final weeks doing the show for a little while. As things start to shift in reopening of Saskatchewan, I will be going back to some form of catering work. So I want to have at least one more show before I kind of get back to work here. And so it has come to my attention that someone, a friend of mine, would really, really like to make some butter chicken, a homemade sauce butter chicken. This happens to also be something that I love, and I wanted to say no only because we made so many chicken dishes, but chicken is so readily available, it's so easy to use, it can work in so many different things. But again, you can make it a butter chicken without chicken and make it vegetarian for yourself as well. So I think that's what we're going to do next week. So you guys can get ready for that. All right. So I got my chicken and my oregano cut up here. I'm going to add all that beautiful roasted chicken right into the soup mix here. We're really going to allow that flavor to start to build here. All right. So let's take a look. My rice is looking good. Looks like I need to cover it up. Turn it on to low. I'm sure y'all can figure out how to make a little pot of rice, but I'm not going to cook this too long because I'm going to let it sit. So it'll carry over cook. It'll continue to cook in the pan afterwards. All right, so we're going to time this for about, I only ever need about 10 minutes on that rice, but depending on what kind of rice you're using, you might need a little longer or a little shorter cooking time. Cook accordingly. I'm going to give this a nice stir. Oh yeah, that looks great. All right. Beautiful, beautiful. So it's nice and thick in there right now, but we're going to add the rest of our veggie stock. So I said 2 liters before, and I said that on the ingredient list if you wanted to use some for your rice as well. I'm only using about 1 liter of veggie stock. If you had more veggie or chicken stock, I would use more, but I just so happen to only have 1 liter left. So I'm going to also use water. So with this recipe, about 2 liters total. So I had 1 liter of stock. I'm adding about 1 liter of water. But you can do all stock or all water, but the veggie stock is really what's going to give it the flavor here. Beautiful. So that's got a nice soupy looking texture to it. Interesting. So we're going to let that cook out for a little bit and tidy up our station. And then we're going to add our okra. So, with the limes, I think I'm just going to use 1, and I might not even need it, but in case I do, I'm going to cut it up and get it ready. I like to very simply cut my lime in half, and I'm just going to center of the lime just to allow some of those juices to come out a little bit easier when I squeeze it. So, if you have one as well, mine unfortunately broke recently, so I will be using my hands. Alrighty, everybody good? Everybody having fun? Not losing it yet? It's such a simple dish. So excellent though when you take the time to build the flavor. We're going to turn up our oven a little bit here, or our stove top a little bit here. And once that comes to a boil, we're going to give it a taste. It's looking really nice, but I'm thinking it might be a little tomatoey. So one thing we could add to help round out the acidity from the tomatoes will be a little bit of sugar. So a little bit of white sugar really helps when we're working with tomato-based items. Helps round out that intense acidity, especially if we're using lime juice and stuff like that, stuff of that nature. I suppose it's good to have kind of a backup. So a little bit of sugar to help round it out. And we got our okra ready, we got our limes ready, and I honestly don't think I'm going to need any more of these spices because I'm usually pretty decent at measuring out how much spices I'll need. And I have this handy dandy little roll out here. So I'm not going to even bother keeping those out. See, look at this. This is like the easiest time we've had with dishes and stuff. I just think it's so crazy. I didn't even realize how truly simple it was to make this dish. But honestly, it's something I don't think a lot of people think of to make, but yet it's so easy to do. And it's so flavorful. And it's really, really worth taking the time to put it all together. So I'm going to show you this last little bit. I'm going to show you how to plate it, but it really should be simmering for about an hour. So we're going to get it ready. I'm going to have it simmering after I end my little time here with you guys. And then I'm going to post a picture of mine when it is done online for you guys to take a look at and see kind of the difference in what you guys thought yours looked like and mine look like. And I would love, if any of you are on the call today watching us live, if you would send me one of your pictures from any of the times that you've been cooking with Maid Marien's Catering. I really want to do a collage at the end of our kind of time. Once things kind of go back to some sort of a normal, I want to have some pictures of all the work, all the hard work you guys have been doing to make these dishes with me week after week. It's been a lot of fun. It is with some sadness that I think next week will be my last week, but it's time to go back to work soon. So I'm just going to have to find another way, but it has been a really rewarding experience for me to be able to cook with all of you every week and get to share in some of the things that really make my experience with cooking so phenomenal. And one of those things is learning about the history of the food and the dishes and the culture behind it and the way it brings people together. And, you know, it's so cool when you're in the southern states. You know, there is such a melting pot of people. Louisiana is definitely no exception. There's a melting pot of human beings there. And this is a really amazing dish because it's shared widely across all ethnicities and just totally something that anybody can have. And lots of people know how to cook. And lots of people have competitions on who makes the best gumbo, what a staple. You know, kind of would be like the pierogi is to us. Gumbo would be to someone in Louisiana. Very similar concept. All right, my rice is almost done, so I'm going to shut that down. Looks like I've got a nice simmer on here, so I'm going to go ahead and give that bad boy a taste. So it's nice and soupy right now. Yeah, so I have lots of tomato flavor here. Definitely going to need some sugar. So I'm going to do about 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. Maybe more like 2 teaspoons of sugar. Just to round that out. Now that it's been cooking for a little bit, we are going to add our okra. So we bring it to a simmer. We're going to add the okra. We're going to let that cook out for the remainder of our time here. So as it's cooking, you can see the chicken starts to break apart. I really like that. I mean, you can have it a little chunkier if you wanted to. I really like the chicken to kind of shred up. It's again going to add to that thickness and stew-like consistency that you really expect to see from a good gumbo. I have had ones that are a lot soupier and brothier. It's not my favorite way to eat it. I like having a lot of different stuff in there. Like most things, I like it on the thicker side. So, oh my goodness gracious. I put the okra in and it took me about, 30 seconds and it's already starting to thicken. So this is why I don't think that this dish needs a roux. And I know that's very, very taboo to say because I know traditionally you always make a roux and then you also use the rice and the okra to thicken the dish. But I think that the okra does a good enough job on its own. I just thin mine out a little bit and keep the flavor nice and punchy by using the tomatoes and all the different vegetables and then just less water broth. I find that really brings out a really nice flavor. And yes, it is starting to thicken up quite a bit. Have some really, really nice looking gumbo here. Let me give that a little taste. Nice. I need some salt and I need some cooking. So we're gonna add our salty salt here. I'd say another couple tablespoons, and I like it punchy, so I'm gonna add a little extra pepper too, because I like it peppery. All right, I do think I need a little lime. So if you have lime, I don't think I put it on the ingredient list. I'm sorry, but if you have a little lime, it makes a bit of difference. I like the lime flavor. You really don't necessarily need it though, and a little lemon juice will work as well. But I think that if you're gonna have jalapenos and anything, you pretty much need to have lime. I just think they go well together. And they're hard to eat one without the other, in my opinion. I'm going to take that whole piece of lime and toss it right in this. And you know what? Because I like that lime, I'm going to do the whole thing. Really going to brighten up that spiciness and add to that tomato flavor. I'm going to stir those right in. Gorgeous. So, I have a nice thickness going on here. My okra will need to cook out a little bit longer. And I want to break down that chicken a little bit more. It's looking really nice. It's looking really like it's starting to thicken up. I'm going to give that probably another 40 minutes or so. And then I'm going to serve it. So the way I'm going to serve it is I'm going to take my bowl, take an ice cream scoop, take one big scoop of rice and place it right in the center, and then we're going to pour that gumbo, nice and thickened gumbo, all along the edge of it. Maybe give it a little sprinkle of parsley, or maybe a little fresh lemon or lime wedge on top. Totally up to you. I would love to see what you guys come up with the plating. If there's a different way you'd like to plate it, or a different garnish that you're going to use, or maybe you added some sort of extra vegetable. I've seen people put roasted corn in there. I've even seen peas. You could even have some extra bell peppers, maybe a little bit of lightly sprinkled minced bell peppers on top would be a really nice garnish. I think it'd be fun if I got to see what you guys come up with. So I'm going to leave it up to you. I think we're going to have an early dinner tonight, but I'm going to let this guy simmer for another 40 minutes, and then I'm going to come back online and I'm going to check on all of you and see how you did. I really underestimated how long it would take me to prep and get that ready. I figured it would take me a lot longer with the amount that I talk, but it turns out I can talk and work at the same time really, really functionally. So I apologize for overdoing it, but it is going to take us close to 6 o'clock when we are going to eat, but we're going to eat a little bit early today. Just be mindful while your gumbo is in the pot to come and stir it every so often. Once you add that sugar is going to caramelize the bottom of the pan. So once it thickens, it is going to be very sticky at the bottom of the pan. So just be mindful of your temperature on the stove. So I have mine on medium right now. Probably going to turn that down a little bit closer to low for a simmer. And I'm going to leave it there and just casually stir it for the next 40 minutes or so. When it's all said and done, your flavor should come together really well. From my initial tasting, I can tell that the sugar is helping. Once the okra cooks out, you're going to get a little different of a flavor. You might want to add a little salt, maybe a little pepper, maybe a little bit more sugar towards the end. Just be mindful of those flavors while you're stirring it, having it all come together. And yeah, I think that is what we're gonna do. Let's see here. What do I got? You are awesome. Cabbage rolls in the oven, not the stove. Yes, cabbage rolls, indeed. That is definitely a community staple around these parts. Thank you, Dad. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you guys get at her. I'm gonna come check on you in about 40 minutes and make sure you guys are all good to go and we're all eating gumbo tonight. I hope you guys have fun and you learned something about okra and maybe a little bit of history. And if you did get file powder, I did not make it necessary. Big part of traditional gumbo and jambalaya is file powder, which is ground sassafras. And I looked everywhere in town and I couldn't find it. Honestly, I make it without and it tastes just fine. I don't think it adds a huge amount of flavor, but it is a very traditional ingredient. So if you have some, I wait till close to the end of cooking, probably within the last 15 minutes, to add about maybe a teaspoon of that dried sassafras. So if you did get it and you have someone want to use it, by all means, right before you're done cooking, about 15 minutes until you're done, add that file powder and you will be golden. Other than that, I think we're good. Yeah. Short and sweet on a Monday afternoon. Fabulous. Well, I will be back to check on you guys in a little bit. Bon appetit.